Hello, Jonah.
Hey Daryl, good to see you.
Nice seeing you. Nice seeing you. Happy holidays to you.
You too. It's nice to
So,
be here.
Professor Kimberly Crenshaw, Madam
Hey there,
President,
Daryl.
Executive Director, and every. Welcome, everyone, to this Tele-Town Hall sponsored by the Transformative Justice Coalition. I'm Attorney Daryl Jones, the board chair of the Transformative Justice Coalition, and so excited that you have decided to join us this evening for this Tele-Town Hall, this national Tele-Town Hall. We will be talking about We Will Rise, shaping a winning agenda for 2025 and 2026 in the face of adversity. And folks, let me tell you, we have just assembled an incredible panel that's here that's going to dissect it from various viewpoints, from different angles. And it's just going to be a phenomenal experience and learning experience, I believe, for us all. I thought that we'd start with a poem from Khalil Gibran with one of our Gen Z alumni, Jada Jeffrey. Jada, are you with us?
Jada has not joined just yet.
Okay. So while we're waiting for Jada to join, because y'all gonna enjoy Jada Jeffrey when she does this poem. She's just outstanding, just a wonderful person, a poet laureate in training. But with that, let me bring up the president and founder of the Transformative Justice Coalition. She really needs no introduction, but I'm going to give one anyway. She is just one of the most phenomenal women that you could ever ask to be a part of any type of activation, of any type of movement. The level of commitment, I always say if the Supreme Court would simply listen to Barbara Arnwine, we wouldn't be in this mess with voting rights today. Folks, it's my pleasure to introduce the President Emeritus of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, our President of the Transformative Justice Coalition, and its founder, Attorney Barbara Arnwine. Barbara.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Daryl. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, all of you who are with us today. I want to start off by thanking all of our panelists. Ooh, you got the platinum class. You got the A-list class today to bring you their best thoughts, their best perspectives, and to give you some practical advice on where we go from here. Not just talking about, pie in the sky, but what do we do practically? How do we organize? How do we unite? How do we build? How do we take back? How do we build forward? All of these things. But, I want to be very clear that after just weeks of hearing all kind of nonsense, diagnostics about this last election, I have made a determination that I do not stay on any teletown halls, any events where they don't start. Absolutely, we start by giving a shout out of love. And I got some love to spread tonight. I want to do a shout out of love to the 92% of Black women who showed up and showed the H out over these last weeks. I don't want to hear none of this stuff because Black women were there. They took it to the max. I mean, young Black women in the first month after the announcement, and I know we're nonpartisan, and I'm just talking about what happened, folks. After the announcement of Harris's candidacy, within 1 month, Black women had set new records for voter registration, especially young Black women. Don't forget that. Don't leave our people hanging by talking about, all this other nonsense. Let's start off with a shout of love, because it took some serious love and hard work for people to show up as they showed up repeatedly over and over again. I also want to start off with a shout out of love to the overall Black community, the really true base of the Democratic Party. It doesn't matter if they don't love the Black base enough to do what is necessary to be done. And we're going to talk about some of those problems. But I want to give love, just solid, beautiful love, to all of that gorgeous base that had to fight. I want to give love to every single person. Do you hear me? Every single person who made phone calls, who wrote postcards, who got out there and knocked on doors, who canvassed, who gave rise to the polls, who held parties at the polls, who did so much love to all of you, because you are the real spirit and embodiment of what it takes for democracy to actually work. And lastly, I got some serious love to give to the 75 million people who resisted centuries of racism and sexism, indoctrination around misogynoir, to be told that Black women have a place that they've got to be relegated to, cannot rise above. Oh, I want to give some love to all of those 75 million voters who resisted years of voter suppression, polls being moved, purging, all of these inactive listing, all of these problems that people had to deal with. Bomb threats this year. Daryl, everybody, we had 67 accounted for bomb threats that people had to deal with and had to go to the polls. And so far, those bomb threats have been what? Traced back to Russia? Come on. Yet there's not one hearing, not one headline about this. Come on, folks. I want to give some love to those 75 million who resisted years of voter misinformation, disinformation, deceptive practices. I want to give some love for all of those who stood in line, sometimes for hours, who did all of this to simply vote their heart and their minds. I want to give love to everybody who voted for democracy. People, the pundits don't want to talk about that. And they've been saying, this whole election was about economy, blah, blah, blah. So come on now that the actual exit data is beginning to come out. And remember, folks, we don't have true data for another couple of months until the actual voter files are out by each of the states. We only have a couple of those files out now. And I mean, less than, not even 1/4 are out. So we need to really know the real data, but let's be very clear. Already there's a lot of false punditry out there that I must reject. I want to just point out that now is the time to show love and gratitude, but also now is the time, people, for courage and steadfastness, for perseverance. You see, yes, 107 days was not enough to overcome centuries of white supremacy, centuries of patriarchy. 107 days was not enough to overcome 4 years of election denial and sympathy following assassination attempts and peer spreading of hate, teaching people to hate their neighbors, to hate the people who they rely on to serve them, to take care of their children, to do all the things that people were taught. They hate immigrants, they hate migrants, legal migrants. I mean, just all of this nonsense, talking about dogs and cats and geese and all kind of just lies to basically really perpetuate hate. It's going to be so important in these coming years that we, the 75 million and more, because there's a whole lot of questions about what happened to those 6 million who didn't vote, who were Biden voters, who didn't vote this year. What we got, a lot of that is underneath these disinformation and all these other lies that we've been talking about, that it's all designed to discourage people from voting, all designed to keep people from voting. But I don't want us to miss, as we confront an ugly looking lineup in this coming administration, I don't want us to miss, don't ever forget your victories. Always hold tight to your victories, because love and victories are the same, people. Have some love for the fact that we were able to elect historic elections of Black women senators. The first time two were served at the same time in our whole nation's history. We have new, amazing Congresspeople. Ooh, some of them are so powerful, they're just blowing me away watching them as they're getting ready to take over office. And all of that didn't happen because somebody rolled out of bed. That happened because we worked like hell to make sure that those victories were secured. I categorically reject a lot of the punditry as we've heard it. The economy argument, okay, 10 cents an eggs, all this, price increases of groceries, et cetera. People, be clear. This last Thanksgiving was the largest Thanksgiving holiday weekend in the history of the United States, of people traveling, people doing stuff, people spending money, in other words. Come on, let's really talk about the realities. And now, of course, you got the president-elect saying he can't even bring the prices down. Hopefully this happens, that happens. Come on. Folks, let's really, think about how easy it is to deceive people. I categorically reject that. That's why, quote, somebody didn't win. People can talk about this economy all day long, but they won't say the word sexism. They're not going to say the word racism. They're not going to say the word misogyny. I also reject the categorical conclusion that so many have been making, that this is about identity politics. There are too many identity politics. Really? Are you serious? I mean, identity politics, I'll leave it to Kim. She'll talk about all this by beautiful white skin stuff that a certain candidate was saying over and over and over and over again ad nauseum at rallies. Come on, people. Don't tell me about identity politics. Don't talk to me about wokeism. Really? What? I mean, about, this is all because of, people were, quote, too focused on being woke, too focused on protecting the LGBTQIA community. Are you kidding me? All of these arguments. Listen, I call the next 2 years the fight for Vision 2026. We have to hold tight to our fight. We got to remember and realize that what we are fighting for is just. What we are fighting for, when we want, a climate accountability, that's righteous. When we want gun control, look at what just happened today. When we want to have, a better police accountability, when we want to have a better economy, where we are against rescinding child labor laws, when we are against, people trying to stop folks from unionizing, when we are for an America that is just, that is inclusive, that is robust when it comes to our democracy, those are not shallow values that you just toss away in the wind because of one election. If Harriet Tubman had that attitude, where would we be? If Fannie Lou Hamer, my Lord, Daryl and I once talked to Big Duck, who Jerome Smith out of New Orleans. And Jerome talked about going to visit going to visit Fannie Lou Hamer and sitting there looking at her door. Daryl, I believe he said that there were 50 gunshots in her door. 50 people. Our beliefs, our commitment to our values is what gives us our strength. It's what gives us progress. Anybody can be greedy. Anybody can, just go around counting their money and being about trying to get more of it and taxing, poor people and cutting Social Security and doing all these things. Anybody can do that, but it takes some heart, soul, commitment, and courage to fight for it, for everybody, for a better, not only United States, but for a better global world. Yes, authoritarianism is on the rise, but it's time to fall. It needs to fall. And already we are seeing that our fight is not over, that our fight is having great effects. 2 down already, right? 2 have fallen of these nominees. More will fall. If we do the right thing, if we fight, if we make sure our voices are heard. No anticipatory obedience, folks. No, we don't roll over and say, oh, the bad is coming, so I'm just going to give up. No, we're not Bezos. We're not these other people. We are the people who really believe. We are the people who are willing to fight. We're the people who will hold tight to each other in this moment and who will show nothing but love as we fight for it. So I want to stop, Daryl, because you know me, but I just want to stop and just say again, folks, we will rise and we will fight for it. I look so forward to tonight's conversation. We are going to be talking a lot about practically what we do to win as we move forward. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Can't wait for this panel.
All right, thank you so much, Barbara. I can always count on you to kick it off hot and get it moving, and hold no punches, go straight to the gut of it, and to mix it up. One of the things that Barbara Arnwine lifted up was an atmosphere of perpetrating hate, perpetuating hate, and the hate that is anticipated, the hate that came from the campaign cycle, the hate that that we're anticipating coming into 2025. And when I think about those tense times that we've been here before, right? We've been in these tense times before. I can remember, Professor Crenshaw, somebody by the name of Ronald Reagan, who was the president of the United States, who indicated that he was against the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday being federal. But I also remember him signing that bill into law because of the determination of the people that were behind it. I can also remember that same president declaring ketchup as a vegetable for our children, and the response from that the community response from that, and how that came about. So when I think of people that are fighting back, people that are on point with the people, I can think of no better fighter today on those issues than the Attorney General from the state of Minnesota. He was there with George Floyd for the argument and presenting of that case. He knows something about overcoming anger. He knows something about pulling people together. He knows something while he was in Congress of being on the smaller side, but with the bigger picture and having it prevail over all of the community. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Attorney General of Minnesota, Keith Ellison. Keith.
Hey, friends, how you doing there? So good to see everybody. And Barbara, thanks for lifting up our spirits. I'll get right to it. Right now is the time for us to organize more effectively than we have at any point in our lives, perhaps. What we're essentially defending is everything that our ancestors fought for and won in the 1960s, 70s, and even well before that. But I'm even talking, we're defending the 65 Voting Rights Act. We're defending the revolution that people like Fannie Lou Hamer actually fought for. And what I believe that we're looking at right now is not that different from what our ancestors encountered in 1860s and 70s. People who did not want to see Reconstruction and who pushed back on it. But history doesn't repeat itself. It rhymes, but it doesn't. We're not foreordained. We're not locked into history. We can rewrite it, and we have to. We really do. People are counting on us. And let me just tell you, I'm seeing positive signs. We at the Minnesota Attorney General's office have been working all day and for the last since March on contingency. We worked hard to win the election, but every single day we talked about what are we going to do about immigration? What are we going to do about this Department of Government efficiency? We'll talk about that in a minute. What are we going to do about Schedule F? Very important to plug in on that right now. What are we going to do about the federal government trying to nationalize the Minnesota National Guard and other National Guards? These are all things that we've been thinking about and what our legal challenges are going to be. I was on Capitol Hill last week. Even though I'm a state AG, I can tell you that we met with a group of senators and members of Congress. They're focused. They understand they got a job to do. They understand they can't just, stand by and let these guys do whatever they want to do. We have 235 Biden judges. And so everybody talks about how bad the Supreme Court is. It is bad. But we've got some people on the bench who believe in issuing fair rulings. And so often the best place to win for the lawyers on the call is at the district court level. That's where you want to start. You want to start winning right away. And so I want to be clear that all over this country, all over this world, I've been in touch with people who believe that we have got to fight for what we believe in, which is nothing more than equal justice, fairness, fair elections, and that's where we got to go. There's no time for being down, and that if you want to be down in November 6th, okay, good. November 7th, 8th, got to get up and go. So let me just say that's my first point I wanted to make. Now's the time to organize. A lot of people, particularly lawyers, think that it's all about the legal battle. It certainly is not. In fact, we need the grassroots to be supercharged. I can tell you that yes, it's true that I led the prosecution of Derek Chauvin, who murdered George Floyd, but it was the people in the street that made it all possible. And that kind of energy is going to be necessary now. So if you are concerned about workers' rights, we need you protesting and raising your voice. If you're concerned about nationalizing your state National Guard, to federalize it, to do unjust things against immigrants, it's time to stand up against it. If you believe that it is wrong for Trump to set up a whole new job category called Schedule F, where he can just appoint cronies to create a true deep state, it's time to protest that. We need organized labor. We need the grassroots. We need everybody standing up to advance the cause of true democracy, small d. I want you to know that we have 23 AGs working together, DIM AGs, and we are working on everything from guns policy, because we know Blake Masters. Y'all know Blake Masters? He ran for Senate. He said that there is a gun problem in America. It's Black people, frankly. That's what the man said. Don't believe me? Look it up. Obviously, he was a Trump nominee. They want to put him the head of ATF. We've got to fight that nomination. As I said, they're trying to say that if you have any DEI policy, they might conditionalize federal aid to your state. We have to fight this. We can't capitulate to it. We've got to stand up against it. I know it may sound strange to some of my friends, but we've got to make sure that these people don't try to use their status, and I'm talking about Musk and Ramaswamy, to try to manipulate and shape the federal budget when they have not passed any background checks. They have not declared what their assets are. They're being authorized to cut the federal budget and change the federal budget when they have federal interests, business interests in the government itself ongoing. They have ongoing conflicts. This is illegal, and we're not going to sit around and stand for it. So I guess what I'm really trying to tell you is, as we are together amassing ourselves to stand up for true democracy, rule of law, to stand against authoritarianism, we're not the only ones, and we need to build a national movement, an international movement, really. And because that's just where it is, folks. That's just where we are right now. And I just want to make it real clear that while it is sensible to be concerned, it's not acceptable to be defeated. In fact, the fight is just starting now, and people are already getting buyer's remorse. But we can't be like your typical big D Democrat who waits around for the Republicans to make some outrageous mistakes. That's how they do business. We can't do that kind of business. We got to do the kind of business where we are standing on what's right because it is right as soon as they start going wrong. And that's already now. And that's now. And so I would say wherever it is that you want to organize there, organize around this gunfight. Just last week, Minnesota and New Jersey filed a lawsuit against Glock because they're deliberately making these Glock switches, causing mass shootings all over our country. This is what I call fighting back a little bit. I know you all are doing great things where you are. We've got to keep our communication close so that we know what each other are doing. I'm looking forward to listening to the rest of this call because I know that you all are doing some amazing things that I want to be part of. And I can tell you that, before things before this election was ever determined, before November 5th, I knew that there was a possibility that we would be in this situation, and so did you. So we organized in preparation for it. We know it's not going to be a replay of before. We know that he has a game plan now. He didn't have one before, called Project 2025, but we see the game plan. We know that he has people who've been preparing. So even though, do you know that the Democratic AGs sued him over 130 times and we won 83% of the time? Well, we don't expect that to happen again because he must have learned something from last time. But my point is, we're ready. And even though we don't know everything he's going to do, we're ready. We're ready to stand up for corporate responsibility and against corporate abuses. We can see now the country is absolutely ready for national health care for all. Have y'all noticed? Yeah, they're ready for it. And we're ready to make sure that we make this country, not just defeat Trumpism, but push our country in a whole new direction, greater than ever. We've got to look at this moment as an opportunity. So I'll hand the microphone back, but I'm just honored to be with y'all. And I want you to know that this coalition that you're pulling together, Barbara, is exactly the right thing to be doing in this moment. and we need to encourage more leadership, more organization on every front. Thank you all.
And you're on mute, Barbara.
I was just saying, thank you, A.G. Ellison. Just thank you. That was so moving. And, and I know that we had a few questions that we wanted to ask you. Thank you for bringing those great opening remarks. You made me aware of some things I didn't know. That was just great to hear. I think a lot of people aren't aware that these MAGA AGs from states with huge African American and Latino populations are actually leading the battle in the courts to undo all of our civil rights laws.
Yeah, it's true.
Can you tell people just a little bit about that? Because people don't realize their taxpayer dollars that they're giving, that these people are taking those dollars and using them to deny their present and their children's future by saying no DEI, by fighting the Voting Rights Act, by fighting people. They're even fighting disability rights. Come on now. LGBTQIA, all of that. Tell people more about it, Attorney General.
Yeah. So let me tell you, friends, one of the realities of federalism, of devolving power to the states, is that more and more of the battles are at the state level. You all may recall when the Affordable Care Act was in place and Trump came into office, the DOJ refused to defend the law, and it had to be state AGs that defended the law. And there are many other examples when Trump was trying to throttle the mails before because he feared people voting by mail. It was state AGs that sued the United States Postal Service to stop them from doing that. And I can tell you, at least on 20 environmental laws, the situation was exactly the same. So right now, we see on the other side, it's Republican AGs that are trying to undermine the rights of all Americans. They've sent intimidating letters to over the Fortune 500 companies saying that if you have a DEI program, that we're going to sue you for racial discrimination. Obviously, the lawyers on the call know that this is ridiculous. DEI is the opposite of racial discrimination. It's inclusion. And in fact, you can't say we're going to hire you because you're black or white. You can't. Race-based hiring can only happen under some very restrictive things that it's not the norm. And so saying that you want your company to be able to sell to a diverse client base and to have workers who represent America, there's nothing discriminatory about that. It's ridiculous. And yet Republican AGs are leading the battle to try to do that. They're doing the same thing on this issue of voting rights. It was Republican AGs who filed a petition in the Supreme Court to try to interfere with the voting outcomes in Pennsylvania, the last election. Mm-hmm. And it was not just Ken Paxton, who even the Republicans hate. It was a whole bunch of them. And so there's a group of Republican AGs right now who are trying to interfere with a state's ability to allow for gender-affirming care for kids. And there are a whole range of things that they do to try to undermine American people every single day. We are fighting them constantly. And we were in a meeting with them just last week, and they were telling us what they had coming. And it has to do with everything from the Insurrection Act to the right to choose. Certainly DEI matters. And again, if you live in a state, if there's one other thing I'd like to ask y'all to do, is you should engage your state AG no matter where you are. And if you're in New York, great. Call up Tish and tell her you're there to help her out. If you are in Texas, also great. Let's beat that guy. Let's get rid of him. Also the guy in Tennessee and the guy in Idaho and the guy in Montana and the guy, you name the state, Louisiana, Mississippi. We used to have a Dem AG in Mississippi not long ago, a guy named Jim Hood. We can win in these states, but we need people to run, and we need all of us to engage these people and make demands on what they need to do. So no question about it. While the Republican AGs are a active force opposing the rights of Americans, but Dem AGs are equal and opposite and even greater force. But we need more engagement with you, more help, more assistance, more advice, more research. There's a lot we can do together, and we need to.
And Daryl, one other question, because following you, Ahmaud Arbery's founder is about to speak. But I want to, before we get to Marcus Arbery, I wanted to ask you, I mean, this weekend I saw something and I just shook my head. And that was, from Zimmerman to Kyle Rittenhouse, all the George Floyd haters, and to Daniel Penny. Daniel Penny. We saw a president of the United States,
right?
His president-elect,
vice president-elect,
and his vice president-elect celebrating and making a hero out of a white vigilante who killed a Black man senselessly. And they were making him a hero in this, what did that say to you? Because we're going to talk about vigilantes, next again. But what did that say to you, A.G. Ellison, when you saw that?
What it said to me is that they're green lighting hate and violence, and that we need to organize ourselves in opposition. We need to call it out, and we need to organize in opposition. So here's the thing. During Obama's time, and certainly during Trump, we had a dramatic acceleration in violent hate groups. And one of the reasons is, Trump saying things like, my beautiful white skin. I mean, imagine that. That's incredible that the president of the United States would say would say such a Klan-inspired thing. And I'm not talking about him being proud to be who he is. I'm talking about Klan, Nazi, white racist signaling. That's all it is. Just like when he said, stand back and stand by, everybody knew what he meant. Completely unsubtle. And so what we need to do is on a multifaceted thing, and I think AGs can help do this, is draw community together. Because here's the thing. Most Americans know that this is wrong. And I'm talking about of all colors. But if we're not talking and we're not engaging and we're not pulling people together to talk about the dangerous nature of signaling that killing someone who's unarmed is okay, then we will get more of it. And so we have got to see this as a threat, clear presentation. Also, other scary signs like Kash Patel, will the FBI prosecute hate crime? If the president and the vice president have a vigilante who kills somebody who's unarmed, arm in arm at the football game, will Pam Bondi, who's proposed to be the AG, take any action on hate crimes? We see, Kristen Clark right now taking on hate crimes. And then on the issue of policing, I was at the DOJ last week where they celebrated the 1994 pattern and practice provisions that allow the DOJ to go into local communities and really use their legal acumen to build better relations between police and community. One of the things that the first Trump iteration under that AG distinguished itself with is by getting rid of all the consent decrees. All.
I remember.
And so now you got Kristen Clark and working to build relationships with the community and the Memphis Police Department, in Minneapolis Police Department, and several others been doing a good job with that. Now, are we going to walk away from that? Particularly in the Arbery matter, when the prosecutor is being prosecuted for her discriminatory conduct. What signal should we expect from the White House over that? And right now they're trying to act like Derek Chauvin, who was prosecuted on television. Everyone saw a fair trial. And yet, the racists who want to use the criminal justice system to impose a vertical racial hierarchy are mad about it. And you wonder what position that the federal government will take as his federal case continues to work its way through its post-conviction. What will happen there? I am telling you, we need to organize for to stop these vigilante racist elements and to stop police departments which don't respect the Fourth Amendment and equal protection under the law.
And Barbara, we talk about as Attorney General Ellison was just saying, as we talk about organizing and bringing people together to stand up for that which is right. I can't think of a better person to speak to that than someone who is in rural Georgia, right? And whose son was taken by these three white vigilantes over hate, nothing but pure hate. And the odds that the family had to overcome, because that prosecutor was up for re-election, Jackie Johnson at the time, and was running unopposed, and no one had filed against her, and it was beyond the time for anyone to file. But that family organized with the community, was able to get another person on the ballot, and for the first time in Glynn County's history, a sitting prosecutor was defeated. So, Barbara, now we know that the prosecutor, we've had convictions with the three murders, and now the prosecutor, as Attorney General Ellison was just saying, Ellison just said, is now being prosecuted by the Republican Attorney General in the state of Georgia because of the commitment of this family to see this through. Barbara, I can think of no one else better to bring up to follow up on overcoming odds and staying in the fight than Marcus Arbery. Welcome, Marcus Arbery.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Hey, Marcus.
Hey,
Barbara.
Always good to see y'all.
Marcus, we just left a couple of days ago, December the 11th. There was the motions hearing regarding Jackie Johnson. And I don't think most people know her story about, when you first heard about, I hate to even take you down this road. Oh my God. But when you first heard about your son's murder, they lied to you.
Yes, ma'am, they did. Police and all of them.
They all lied to you.
Yes.
And you, at that time, were you aware that one of the killers, had what was actually had worked for Jackie Johnson and had called her a number of times right after the killing? Were you aware of that? Were you ever told that?
They never told me because they tried to cover it up. We had to find out. That's why you never stop fighting. You find the truth out and God will give you the truth.
And Marcus, she has been brought up on charges. Daryl, do you want to just go over the two charges that she's been brought up on?
Yeah. I mean, certainly one of the charges she's been brought up on is not fulfilling her duties in office, right? Which is
violating her oath.
Violating her oath of office is one of the charges that she's been brought up on. She's also been brought up on a charge of what a lot of us would call interference with the police or obstruction of justice type of charge that is there. And so, with the charges that she's been brought up on, one is a felony and the other is a misdemeanor. So they are significant charges. Marcus, can you share with our folks, how you felt when you heard that Jackie Johnson was being tried and being brought to court for her actions in this case?
It's been a long time coming because she was the ringleader. A lot of people got to understand when you got a DA, it's for all the people, and she did not do her job. She violated the oath of her job. It don't only affect the Arbery family; it affect the whole world.
Yes.
Because you in that power to serve all the people, and you let us all down. So it's all our business to get this lady prosecuted and make her be accountable for what she done wrong. Not just the Arbery family. It's plenty more she done wrong. And when people losing their lives, that's serious. Lives don't come back.
Yes.
That's very serious.
Yes. And you know, Marcus, a lot of families have suffered, but your family, God bless you. You've hung together. And it's been hard. Hard people, it will be 5 years in February since Ahmaud was slain. Marcus, we are calling on people to join us, right? On January the 21st for the trial that will start in Glenn County Superior Court. And there will be, jury selection for a couple of days. And then they're talking about this trial possibly going on for a week and a half to 2 weeks. Do you want to, Janita, can we put up on for all of our audience to see the flyer for the 21st? Because we're calling on people to join us. Because TJC, we made a pledge to the family, to Marcus, to Diane Arbery, to Ruby, to Gary, to William, to Yvonne, to Kimberly now, Cummings. We said that we'll be there and we'll stand by you. But we have been blessed that others have come and stood by this family. It means a lot when the community is there and when people see folks giving love and all kind of support from all over the country to make sure that justice is achieved. We say 100% justice for Ahmaud. We want to invite all of you, please, you are welcome and to come and join us, right, Daryl?
Absolutely, Barbara, absolutely. And if you can't make it, folks, we encourage you to raise a prayer for the Arbery family.
Please.
We encourage you to go back to your church, to your place of religious finding, or wherever you go for your spirit's nourishment. Go there and find that place of peace and ask for justice for the Arbery family. Barbara, as a former prosecutor, I know that convicting Jackie Johnson will not bring the Arbery family peace. It won't do it. It doesn't happen that way.
No.
But what it does do is it brings the family justice. And that's what they're looking for here. That's why they're going 100% justice for Ahmaud Arbery. And folks, we encourage you to keep this family in your minds, keep them in your prayers. And please, if you can make it down to Glenn County, please join us at the Superior Court in Glenn County on January the 21st, or probably the 3 weeks that will be there thereafter. So thank you. Thank you so much. Any parting words you'd like to say, Marcus, with regards to everyone's support and all that you're going through, and anything that you'd like to say to the audience?
I like to say, give all glory to God, because at the end of the day, we all got to answer to God. And it's been a long, hard fight for our Arbery family, and we still suffering behind Ahmaud death. That's why we want 100% justice, because we don't want no another family to go through what our family went through. Thank y'all very much for the fight y'all in, and y'all keep fighting, and y'all won't stop. Like me and you and the Barbara say, we don't run out of gas.
Well, I picked up on my friend Cliff Albright saying, "Can't stop, won't stop." So we're going to keep pushing. We're just going to keep pushing. So thank you so much, Marcus, for everything. Thank you so much for being here this evening.
Thank you.
Would you like to introduce our panelists, Barbara?
Ah, thank you. I am so happy to introduce our panelists. We have, just you talk about star panelists. I have to start, of course, with someone who I consider a sister to me. I consider her one of my really, thank God, uh, for having someone who is as strong, as brilliant, as prescient, as clairvoyant as she has been over these many years to this world. She is a gift to the world. I'm talking about Kimberly Crenshaw. She is the co-founder and executive director of the African American Policy Forum and the founder and executive director of the Center for Intersectionality and Social Policy Studies at Columbia Law School. She is the Promise Institute professor at UCLA Law School and the Isidore and Seville Sushbaker professor at Columbia Law School. She is known by all of us because of her work on intersectionality, creating a concept that has become one of the most dominant concepts in the law at this time. She is the most often cited scholar in the world when it comes to anything legal. She is a creator of critical race theory, and most importantly, in addition to all I've said, we are celebrating this weekend the 10th anniversary of Say Her Name, which she created, the Say Her Name campaign, which you'll hear more about. And she is a host of the podcast Intersectionality Matters. She's a columnist for the New Republic. But as you know, she puts on these incredible webinars under the black light, so many, and she has fought over and over and over and over and over to stop book banning, to make sure that there's a freedom to learn. She has been amazing and is part of Ebony's Power 100 issue. Welcome, Professor Kimberly Crenshaw.
Thank you, Barbara.
It is so good to have you here. We're going to get straight into your questioning, but let me just introduce the two other panelists real quick. I want to introduce Jonah Minkoff Zern. Now, Jonah and I met, a number of years ago, working in the field. I mean, we met the hard way, actually doing the work and, out there trying to get people to help in Georgia now. We were working on, on the, the senatorial elections and runoffs and everything. And we had to do all kinds of things, put phone banks together, work on all kinds of ways to organize people. And Jonah is a consummate organizer. And Jonah is just a man of tremendous heart and spirit. He is the co-director of Public Citizens Democracy Campaign. He has organized nationwide mobilizations to challenge ongoing threats to democracy from former President Donald Trump and his allies. He's coordinated grassroots activities to pass federal voting rights and democracy reforms. He's mobilized national action for a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United. He's led and supported state-based efforts to win voting rights, public financing to protect election officials and prevent artificial intelligence deepfakes in elections, and coordinated national support for the Second Chances Florida ballot initiative, which restored the eligibility to vote to many Floridians with felony convictions. He's a longtime organizer, and we are just amazed and just so happy that he was able to join us tonight. Thank you, Jonah Minkoff Zern, for being with us tonight. Thank you, Jonah.
Thanks so much, Barbara. I'm so humbled to be part of this group.
No, you are quite the leader, and thank you for your heart. I also am happy to introduce Dr. Kyler Wiltz, who I met about not even a year ago, and during this year, who is a leader in the Gen Z voting rights community. And it is our real pleasure because he's a medical doctor, folks, and a trained medical doctor, and he brings so much wisdom at his very young age. Over the past 6 years, Dr. Kyler Wiltz has been able to pursue his educational aspirations at prestigious graduate and professional institutions that bear footprints in various corners of the United States. Having earned his Doctor of Medicine and Master of Business Administration degrees from Howard University, yes, DHU, along with the Masters of Public Administration and Masters of Public Policy degree, a double concentration program from Eastern Illinois University. As a first generation physician with aims of becoming a surgeon, Dr. Wilt's greatest motivations are being able to tackle, dissect, and solve various facets of healthcare disparities, domestically and globally, while serving as a community leader and mentor to those of the most significance to him. He understands and embraces the role and responsibility that his contribution to breaking such barriers serves for his family and for those who look similar to him. Welcome, Dr. Kyler Wiltz, to our show tonight.
Thank you so much. It's extremely humbling to be here, and with this room full of trailblazers. I'm actually looking forward more to the wisdom that I'll be able to gain from you guys than actually answering my own questions. So thank you all for being here, and let's get the ball rolling. Have to keep fighting.
All right, so Daryl, we have some real heavy questions for. Let's get started for this panel. Let's start with Professor Kimberly Crenshaw. Mm-hmm.
Right, let's jump right in. Professor Crenshaw, 2024 election. My goodness, what an election it was. You were part of an effort that turned out 92% of the Black women in the country that came out and voted for Harris for the most part. And we know that the white women came out and they voted 50% for a candidate that stood against reproductive rights. And since the victory for President-elect Trump, there's been a call now, initially for a women's march, but now it's for a people's march in opposition to meaning for the President-elect Trump's policies. What is the message that you'd like to share for Black women? I mean, should they be a part of this?
Ooh, well, that's what Black women are debating now. Let me set up why it's even a question. And I've been asking my students this. When a group understands the assignment, and I say this as a professor, and they get a 92%, right? That is an A grade.
Mm-hmm.
And getting that 92% doesn't win you valedictorian. It doesn't make you an example for everybody else. People don't ask, what were you studying? How did you dedicate yourself to understanding the assignment and getting it right? How can you be a TA and create other students who get it right? When that doesn't happen, it's like the only time getting an A grade isn't enough to serve as an example for everybody else. And you have to shrug your shoulders like, so who does this happen to? It happens to Black women. Mm-hmm. Black women understood the assignment. And here's the kicker. All of the things that folks are trying to use as an explanation for why other people didn't get the assignment, those held true for Black women, and they could still figure out their way through the assignment to protect our democracy. Black women have suffered because of inflation. Black women don't have security about what the future is going to look like. Black women haven't been addressed specifically, alienated, and say screw the elections, and they were the ones that turned out with most enthusiasm within the coalition that claims to be the pro-democratic coalition. So what do we make of the fact that the conversation in spaces that claim support from Black women are the last ones to embrace Black women's choices? So as I move forward into what's coming, I'm deeply concerned about everything that everyone has been talking about, from the weaponization of white insecurity, to the idea that laws have gone too far, to the idea that equality is a zero-sum game. That's the oldest page in the book. Remember, President Johnson, and I don't mean Lyndon Johnson, I mean Andrew Johnson, vetoed civil rights bills that just were giving Black people the same thing that white people had. And they claimed that that was reverse discrimination, that that was going too far, that that was taking something away. And that happened when we still had the impressions of the chains on our wrists. So if they're able to call civil rights laws reverse discrimination, to attack them, to undermine them, and they were able to do that when Black people who'd been born into slavery were still walking this earth, then of course they're able to Willie Hortonize equal rights now. So we know that's happening. They gave us the platform. We've been yelling about it and screaming about it for at least 10 months. So we know where they're coming from. What I'm most worried about is where the politicians we elected, the party leaders that supposedly answer to what the 92% shows, where are they showing up? And the reality is, if you look at all of the post-election conversation, rather than pointing their finger at the misogyny and the racism and all of the isms that we saw in Madison Square Garden, we saw when Trump talked about his white skin, we saw when he said to the Proud Boys, stand by. We know that that plays a role in American politics. When the people standing right beside us are not willing to call out what has clearly contributed to this crisis, that's what makes me worry. Because it means that the people who should be lining up and being prepared to fight this old monster that's come back again are trying to figure out how they can still dance at the party without us. That's what ended Reconstruction. That was what was about redemption. That was the reconciliation between the white folks who prosecuted the Civil War and those who defended the Union. They finally came together and said, look, we can get on with the business of America, which is business, if we kick this albatross to the curb. And that albatross was us. So when I see the failure to call out what happened, when I see the failure to talk about, you know what, we didn't do what we needed to do for voting rights. You know what, we didn't message what we needed to message when it came to Project 2025. You know what, we didn't get the message to people about why this election was so important. We didn't get the people who are pro-democracy to also be pro-anti-racism. We weren't able to get those folks to realize that the Achilles heel to democracy in America has always been white supremacy. We didn't do it this time, and we saw what happened. So for me, the silver lining would have been at the end of this election if everybody said, you know what, we soft pedaled. We took our base for granted. We didn't fund in the way we should have. We went for those few votes that have never been in our column and sacrificed some of the voters who needed to be activated. If I heard this in the post-election moment, I'd at least be a little bit relieved that we know what the fight is. But I'm not hearing that yet. So I'll go to the final thing, which is the answer to your question. Should we go to this People's March? So I have jokingly said it, but I'm getting a little bit more serious. I do remember when Minister Farrakhan did the Million Man March, and I was puzzled by it because I was like, how are we going to have a march 30, 40 years after the main march on Washington, and fewer of us are invited to go, namely Black women? And I still have issues with it. But one of the things that he did do that I think might be important for our allies to be able to articulate is it was a march of accountability. Accountability for the failures to fight, accountability for the failures to be to show up, accountability for not doing what we need to do to protect ourselves. So if the march is about internal exploration of why we weren't ready to fight for the future of democracy, if it's a commitment to not disname, unname, ignore what we know is actually happening, if it's about that kind of accountability, if it's about promising never again, meaning never again will we unsay what needs to be said, never again will we allow them to come after Black history and critical race theory and intersectionality in 1619. That's our history. That's our legacy. We're not going to let that go. If that is what's on the agenda, then count me as being there. If that's not on the agenda, and if it's just about what the other side of the aisle is doing, I'm going to sit at home and type out what my screed is at this point.
Well, Professor Crenshaw, you say that, and I wonder, because, has the hand sort of been shown from this last election as to, where they are? And if that's the hand, if the hand that has been played, the hand that has been shown is the hand that truly exists, is a solution perhaps start thinking about being independent rather than part of a party? Are you being taken for granted? I mean, don't you hit your wagon on the mule that's moving in your direction?
So here's our challenge. When it comes to the reliable voters, when it comes to who shed blood to be part of this party, when it comes to the deeper ideas, when it comes to the democracy that most people think is theirs, when it comes to the rights that they take for granted, we did that stuff. Mm-hmm. We built that. That's ours. The problem is, number one, we don't have the money that runs the party. We are the labor behind the party. Mm-hmm. So the question is, what are we going to do to lay claim to that which we have built? I don't even hear us having that conversation in some of the places where these decisions are being made, which is why, again, I'm at the, what kind of conversations are we having with our counterparts in the party? What kind of accountability are we calling for from the elected officials who are basically supposedly our avatars? Are they being responsive to our issues? Or are they playing the long game with the party, or perhaps the short game, when it really gets down to it? So I'm not that quick to run from something that we have skin in the game, but I am willing to call out the fact that the skin that we have in the game is not being honored. And I'm willing to call out the people, some who look like us, who aren't representing us in the way that they should.
And Jonah Minkoff-Zern, when I look back at this election, and I'm thinking about much of what Professor Crenshaw has just laid out about how the Black community, the Black women in particular, but the Black community overall, I think was played as part of this as the pundits lay it out, right? The pundits laid this out, and the pundits say that it was this identity politics that was the problem. The pundits say there was an over reliance on reproductive rights leading the way. That was the cause of what happened in this election series. When you hear this attack on woke politics, and I thank Public Citizens, because you're a partner with us. You're a partner here on this Tele-Town Hall. You partnered with us on other Tele-Town Hall. You partner with us when we go get arrested. You partner with us when we're in the streets. You're a partner. You're there. So we value your opinion. We value your thoughts. But when you hear them saying that the problem was y'all were too focused on identity politics and not on the American people and the American voters, Jonah, talk to us. What does it mean to you? What's going on?
Well, I think we have to address the issues of racism in the United States. We have to address the issues of attacks on the LGBT community. We have to address the issues of attacks on women. Those all have to be part of our discussion. And we also have to understand how many people across this country feel like the systems aren't working for them, and speak to all of them. And I know, Barbara, we spoke earlier about the oligarchs, and that this is about the oligarchs taking power. And I think like we have to talk about how do we build common ground with with the American people who are feeling disenfranchised, who cheered when the CEO of United Healthcare was killed, which we don't want to cheer at the killing of anyone, but the fact that people felt so angry at the healthcare being denied to them, that they felt like they could identify with that struggle. We have to talk to all of those people and build that. So we have to block the attacks that are coming in, on our communities, on immigrant communities, on, on LGBT communities, on Black communities, um, on women and reproductive health. And then at the same time, we will break down MAGA and who they are, and then build bridges. So the way we're going to win and build power is to build bridges, is to figure out how do we draw connections with people who have like struggles and are feeling like the system just isn't working. So they feel like they're on our team. And we have to build power and we have to win. And I think that the way we get to that victory is to figure out what our common identity is, in those struggles. And I think we build as we climb, right? That's how we have to look at this.
Do you think that there's some type of fracture that possibly now begins to develop because there's a feeling that because of the focus on LGBTQIA issues, or because of the focus on any particular community, because of the focus on immigration and migration, that somehow that cost the election for a particular party, and therefore we need to reshape it, rethink it? Those that are on the progressive side, are they now going to be challenged by some of those that are the moderates that are saying we need to pull back, we need to change strategy, we can't come with this whole collaboration thing, that America's not ready?
I mean, those are our struggles, right? Like I'm Jewish, and we look at the history of struggle and the idea that when they come for one person, they come for all of us. So all of those struggles are our struggles, and we have to identify with each one of those, and we have to stop. We have to stand up when they come for each of those communities, and use that to build power, to build bridges, to work to have the power we need to overcome them. So it's not about forgetting those struggles. It's about centering those struggles and then building alliances, that are going to let us win. That we have to stop, I think, saying, well, people are uneducated or people don't know what they're doing, and we have to ask questions about why they're doing what they're doing, and build alliances with them. And I think it comes back, like, I think the message, we're working to defeat the nomination of Patel, right? Like, we think that Hash Patel is a real threat. We saw COINTELPRO, or I'm too young to have seen COINTELPRO, but that's what he is modeling. That's what he's saying he's going to do with the FBI. He's going to weaponize it against us from organizing. He's going to get in our communities and work to stop our organizing. And we're working to stop his nomination. We think that's winnable. And I think as we do that, we have to have the message that this guy is a security force for the billionaires that Trump has surrounded himself for. Like, they are going to try to do things to us. He's not really about providing economic opportunity for people. He's about providing opportunity for the billionaires that are in his cabinet and that he surrounds himself with. And this guy Patel is his security force, so we can do those things for us, so we can take away those rights and those abilities from our communities and those opportunities, and still do those things. So we have to help people understand how those different pieces are interconnected, how attacks on our education system, on our healthcare system, on our basic our ability to have a living wage, the things that he's coming for, are interconnected with his building up a security force that's going to stop us from organizing to prevent those attacks, because really it's about building up power for his billionaires, for him and his billionaires.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that you say that, because we know that there's going to be some strategies that are used to try to separate, turn folks against one another, and not lift up realities of what's happening. You know, Dr. Wills, one of the things that's striking to me, and Barbara and I were talking about this, was the incredible role that Black Gen Zs played. Black Gen Zs played in the community, organizing people, educating voters, getting people activated to the polls. You yourself were a participant in creating a program to be certain that that Black Gen Zs were getting to the polls, and that Gen Zs had the opportunity to get to the polls. But we don't see any acknowledgement of that from the media. It's like none of this existed. There's no acknowledgement. I have not, and perhaps you've heard it. I've heard no acknowledgement anywhere with the role and the efforts that Black Gen Z has played, and Gen Z in general has played. Can you give us shed some light on that for us? I mean, are we off?
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, special shout out to our founder of Vote HBCU, Tavon Blair, amazing leader. He really kicked off the work, and I jumped on as the first program manager. Also our parent organization, XC Leader. When we kind of look at the history of what civic engagement looks like, you really can't tell the story within this country without Black young people, right? When we think about Dr. King, he was leading the Montgomery bus boycott at my age. John Lewis, our model for TJC was a young whippersnapper, when he took over leading SNCC and doing all of these things. You look at Chairman Fred Hampton, who was unfortunately assassinated at the age of 21. And ironically enough, with the boomers that we have, up until this generation, the boomers were deemed as being the most shake the table generation that this country had ever seen. So when you look at the work that Gen Z, more specifically in the Black and Brown communities, has been doing, I think is a two-pronged reason why we aren't getting our just in our due process. And it's an intersection between age and also the color of our skin, right? Kind of jumping back to the boomers, it's again interesting how they were in the same situation as us. Vietnam War, a lot of economic uncertainty, and they took all of their energy, they organized, they put their foot to the metal and really began to shake things up. And seeing that this generation is now trying to do the same thing because we can't afford houses like our parents. We want to get education, but college tuition is skyrocketing, right? We're looking at grocery prices increase, but wages aren't, and profits are for these corporations. So, we're seeing all of these things take place and we want to take action, but we still kind of get pushed to the side as being, oh, they're just kids, they aren't really doing as much. But as we know, statistically, that's wrong. Every year, we're continuing to see more Gen Zers. I'm technically a zillennial. That's what they call us, those born in 96. But we're seeing more of us take on these initiatives to organize voters, to run for office, to do all of these things. And, this is just, from the TJC leadership conference when they told us that it's time to stop acting and take charge. At some point, we have to take that amongst ourselves within our own spirit to put our own feet to the metal and to really say that we're not going to stand by anymore. These seats need to be for us. We need to be at these tables because this is the world that we will have to live in. And then when you again kind of look at the color of our skin, oftentimes Black and brown people, even though we are the labor and not the funds, as it was so eloquently mentioned by Professor Crenshaw, right? At the end of the day, those that are on the ground, they deserve the larger stake in what's going on. We're beginning to seeing, organizing for workers, in my field, residents are even fighting back as well because the little guy is tired of being stepped on. And we are seeing these things in our Black and brown communities, more notably in our young people, right? I don't want to grow up and not be able to afford a house. So it starts here, being the next John Lewis, being the next Dr. King. There is never a time to wait because the moment is always now to fight for justice and for equality. And I think our generation is going to rewrite that narrative and get back to the roots of what youth grassroots organizing and action is.
And I know that Barbara has a question. Barbara, you ready?
Oh, wow, Kyra's got me going. So I just wanted to point out to everybody, TJC holds twice a year what's called the Gen Z and Millennial Voting Rights Leadership Training. and we try to train 50 people per training, one in April and one at the Congressional Black Caucus in September, and Dr. Kyra Wilkes was part of our last September class of this year. And Dr. Wilkes, I mean, I was looking at the results around the country, and here in Maryland I saw the young people, the young people who did not only the votercades, throughout the whole state, but I also saw, online constantly all the organizing that was going on in Congressional District 2 in Alabama by a lot of our young people who have been, trained, who are what we call alumni now of the program. What do you think it means when our young people are in that leadership? What does it say to them? What does it do for our communities? What do you see as being the benefits of such an amazing mobilization?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this also is an aspect of DEI, right? It's already been proven that diversity in these spaces not only allows for, the introduction of new ideas, the infusion of new energy, but more importantly, like the results are just immensely better, right? Coming from a medical background, the statistics show that patients that have a Black or brown physician, and they are Black or brown, their outcomes tend to be a lot better. And we tend to see the same things when we're looking at the organization and civic engagement, right? So at Vote HBCU, a lot of us, all of us actually are alumni, right? So being able to go back and to communicate with these young people and again, give them the voice that in some cases we wish we had while we were coming up, and actually mentoring them and serving as a fulcrum to kind of launch them into the world that is civic engagement. Kind of another gem that you guys mentioned that, you guys are getting to the point where it is time to pass off. And, you handing us the ball, it is our job to pass it off to others within our generation. And yeah, I think that's ultimately, what it comes down to, adding that diversity of thought, that energy that the young people ultimately always have. And, it was on full display at the CJC conference, right? And everyone left and went back across the country. And right before the election, everyone was full throttle, really getting it. And, although the outcome may not have been, what we wanted optimally, we did get to see, what we were worth, right? We had the opportunity, and we were very close to electing the first African American female president of this country. And who would have ever thought that this was going to happen in 1619, when the first slaves were brought here, or even when women first got the right to vote within this country, or Black people got voter right protections, right? So we're steadily moving forward, and at the end of the day, any progress is better than no progress at all. As long as you put one foot forward, you'll at least have something. If you fall back, at least you're not where you were at the beginning. So just keep on pushing, and young people have that energy. Our time is now, and the hope and the belief that we have in a better world is just going to continue to be on the front display. I think we're going to change the world. I think we're going to be the ones to keep pushing it.
Amen. Amen. And Daryl and Kim and Jonah, I wanted to talk about how we see all this amazing, Gen Z energy. We know that we had this manosphere nonsense that was going on. That's something we can talk about in future shows. But I did want to, talk, about the underfunding. People don't realize. I was talking to a group today, one of the most amazing organizing groups in one of the major southern states. I'm not talking about Georgia or Florida, so you can eliminate those two, who said that they saw this year, for all the organizing they had to do in their entire state, given all their great history of organizing, they received a total of $6,000. People don't understand how terribly underfunded African American organizations were. And we talk about that 6 million people who are all races, who did not show up, who showed up for Biden. That had a lot to do with it, folks. And part of that was because there was this nonsense being said within the party ranks. And and I'm just talking nonpartisan here about what happened, that people were being told that they didn't have to invest in turning out the Black vote. In fact, they were told again that the most important vote was the white working class. Kim, why do we have to keep hearing this? Why do we have to go through this? White suburban moms, soccer moms. Then we have now a white working class. And then this year it was independence also. I mean, what? And when they say that, they mean white. They don't think about the Black working class.
Right.
They don't think about Black independence. What is this, Kim? How do we stop this? How do you ever
This
have
is-
a winning formula if this is the obsession of people in power?
Yeah. And I think obsession is sort of the perfect word for it, because look, we could put this in relationship terms, right? How many times have you seen the loyal person, the hardworking person, the one that has your back being taken for granted because you're trying to reach for something that you haven't had since 1968, and you probably ain't ever going to get it again because of the nature of American politics. So we are talking about abandoning the base of the pro-democratic vote, and by that I mean the pro-democracy people, because of a 2 million and maybe even less deficit. And that deficit happened even in the face of being deeply underfunded getting them out. So talk about a self-fulfilling prophecy. You figure, look, this group ain't got no place else to go anyway. So we don't need to invest a whole infrastructure in getting them mobilized and active and enhancing their capacity to participate in determining our own future. So they get written out, they get underfunded, they get taken for granted. And then when they don't show up in the way you want them to, it just reinforces your belief that you didn't have to invest in them in the first place. So you just spend all the more time saying, "Oh well, we didn't get that 2 million. We didn't get those Lynn Cheney voters. We didn't get the folks who have never been down for this agenda. So we're going to do more. What more do we need to do to get them? You want us to kick our base to the curb even more? Is that what you want? Okay, we'll do that. So we're not going to talk about the attacks on civil rights. We're not going to talk about the attacks on DEI. We're not going to talk about the fact that if we don't talk about inequality, if we don't talk about historical exclusion that continues to play out in our institutions and in our structures, if we don't talk about why there is inequality, it makes it that much harder to defend the policies and practices and laws that are in place to create equality. So the other side, the anti-equality people, they're doing their work by going to the base and eradicating the history, the knowledge, the teaching, the practices. When you erode the foundation, you don't have to knock the building down. The building will implode on itself. That's what's happening. So if we do have faith in the next generation, and I do, we also know that they have to have access to the full story. They have to have access to the tools. We aren't born into clairvoyance. We're not born into racial literacy. It doesn't happen just because of the color of our skin. Somebody told us something. It was our parents, it was our teachers, it was our novelists, it was our artists. They told us what time it was. They're going after that because they know if we don't have access to that, we are confused. We are caught up, in stories that don't have our best interests at heart. And we are unable to fight for our own legacies and what we have a right to demand from the people who we elect. So it's all part of fighting it's a ground game. It's fighting for the legacy, for the literacy. And I'll just end with this. Whenever there was in the past during enslavement a moment where the enslaved us sort of fought back, the same stuff happened. They clamped down on our ability to travel. They clamped down on our ability to read. They clamped down on our ability to tell our story. They clamped down on other people's right to even write about abolition and to take away our ability to testify. This is the same thing that's happening again. So our challenge is to fight every move they make and to fight acquiescence. It is the real acquiescence that is the biggest threat to us right now. Because if we can't bring them side by side to fight for democracy, then the other side, those who are trying to undermine everything, they will win. The only guarantee that we will lose is if we don't fight. That's the only guarantee.
Uh-oh, watch out. Sounds like Reverend Jesse Jackson. That's what he loves to say. If you don't fight, you can't win.
If I may add something.
Yes.
So I was actually going to use a similar analogy to the foundation one. But through this advocating work and registering people to vote and speaking at different forums, once you kind of get through the fluff, one of the biggest reasons why, an increasing number of African American voters, more specifically African American males, have been put off by the Democratic Party, because again, as mentioned, a lot of them feel like they aren't being heard, right? You can go back to, when the Voting Rights Act passed, right? Lyndon B. Johnson, African Americans played a large role in getting him elected. Even before that bill was passed, JFK got elected largely due to a lot of the grassroots work by African American and other brown and black peoples. So when you kind of look at that dedication, that devotion, that just ride or die for the Democratic Party, and now you get to this point where, okay, when are some of these promises going to be kept? When are some of these resources going to be sold back into the community? And the reason why some of them just prefer the Republican Party within that regard is, I'd rather someone tell me a harsh truth than a pretty lie. And that's ultimately what a lot of it is coming down to. And I think the transformation needs to take place where the foundation needs to be renovated, that trust needs to be rebuilt. And that is how you'll get the base back, right? It's like we've held you down for 50 plus years. And even outside of, not getting the resources, not getting the policies passed, you have now shifted your attention to groups who statistically will not change their support. So shifting back to things that work instead of trying to fish into a pot that either doesn't have anything in it needs to be at the forefront, moving forward as to things that we need to do to not only move forward, but to protect ourselves, within this upcoming administration, because it's going to get real. And President-elect Trump isn't going to be the first person that galvanizes these sort of ideals. I mean, he isn't the first, right? If you look at the political campaigns, and I'm a huge historian, look at the similarities between him and President Reagan. Right? You see the Roger Stone connection. You see the Make America Great slogan.
Tell it.
Yeah, you see the pushing of conservative ideals coming shortly after what? The Black Panther Party, the Civil Rights Movement. What got President Trump, President Obama coming in. So we're starting to see history repeat itself, but the difference is we now have a chance to do our own history a lot different, to not make the same mistake. Now, will we? That question is a toss-up to see if we're going to learn from that past.
Well,
I just want to add.
Yeah, go ahead, Jonah.
Yeah, I mean, I think also part of understanding the history is understanding the history of divide and conquer.
Right.
And understanding how, when white and black slaves rose up together, they freed the black slaves and made them into a police force, right? Like into a militia to control the uprising, right? Like the history of understanding how the people in power, the people with wealth, see the idea of dividing and conquering as a way to maintain and build their power. and that's really the root of what we're seeing right now. So I think understanding the history of struggle and the present day struggles in identity, and then also understanding how to build bridges um, among our struggles is really like how we win. Like I think the People's March, the Women's March that became the People's March, it's really still being organized by the Women's March, is a great example of that. Like it's young women of color who are generally the people organizing it, from my understanding, and I think like what they're looking to do is to figure out how to build bridges in their organizing, and I think they're taking a good approach. I really respect the people behind it. Um, but I think that's really what we need to be figuring out how to do. It's not about losing identity in our struggles. It's not about forgetting and not talking about identity and what brings us to the table. It's understanding like how that creates alliances. Like, for me as a Jewish person with my history of persecution and struggle, why that brings me to the table, and like why that kind of history of trauma means that Jewish people are so active in the struggle helps me understand how I connect with other people in struggle. So I think we can both connect with our struggles and our history and also build bridges in doing that. And I think and teach people to do that along the way, including the Democratic Party, which uh, I think is open to learning, you know, um, I think is trying to in a lot of ways, at least some people. Um, but I think it's about asserting that, not expecting someone else to accept it.
Yeah, it's Daryl. I mean, this is a complicated conversation because Kim and I teach the redemption period, right, Kim?
Yes.
And that's important. I mean, if you don't know our history and the redemption period, then you don't understand the moment we're in right now. And I think that's a real gap in education. And Kim, just briefly, quickly tell people what the redemption period is, because I know they're gonna have to go and educate after this. And folks, we'll do another one where we'll go deeper into these issues. But I think, they wanted to stop DEI because the minute you start really helping white people to look at how to become anti-racist.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, come on, when I went to college, I had to relearn everything because I had just started, learning about the lies that I had been taught about Black people and about myself, right? And I had to, really unlearn a lot of bad stuff that had been embedded and beaten into my head. And having been called, Black, and folks, making fun of you and all that stuff, so long in my life. I had to really change and relearn who I really was and come out, a different person. I think that process of transformation is what we lack in most Americans. And instead, we're caught in the redemption period. Talk about that a little bit, Kim.
Yeah, well, and Barbara, you remind me of the fact that the attack on racial literacy, which is
Right.
the book bans are, the attack on critical race theory, the attack on intersectionality. When did that really become the modus operandi, of the right? It was in that same period that the masses of Americans became utterly disturbed about seeing George Floyd being murdered.
Exactly.
And came out in every state of the union. And what was the language they were talking? They were talking about uh, critical race understanding of policing, racism and policing. They were talking about all of the concepts about why and how we continue to reproduce many of the same dynamics that this country was based on. They were becoming far more literate, far more complex in their understanding and far more demanding about accountability. So what happened? Because let's be clear, critical race theory has been around for 40 years, right? Most people didn't hear about it until Fox TV decided that they were going to talk about it like 900 times, like in a month. And so suddenly critical race theory became the thing that goes, that thumps in the night that scares people, rather than it is literacy that helps explain how a Black man could be killed in broad open daylight with someone with a hand in their pocket while he knelt on him until he lost his last breath. It was that activation of so many people, that ability to read and to see and to understand, that was so frightening that it created this huge retrenchment, this huge backlash. And that's what we saw historically. Reconstruction to open up the possibilities for these coalitions that Jonah's talking about, the biracial governments that actually created all the things that are on an agenda for true democracy. That coalition was deeply frightening to the oligarchs of the past.
Yes.
So what did they do? They rolled that racist crap right back out there, knowing that that's the Achilles heel to coalition, knowing that racism can split apart even the most progressive agendas, even those coalitions that were actually working. And so our challenge is, how do we learn the lesson? How do we steel ourselves? How do we build the connections that aren't so vulnerable to the collapse around racism? Unfortunately, there's some who have the answer to it, and they say, okay, we'll be colorblind. And we're going to focus on class, as though that is that is the inoculation. That is not the inoculation. We need to be race conscious. We need to understand how racism divides us, not racism. We have to be able to see it. We have to be able to show the cost of it. And we have to recognize that the majority of people who have these ideas are not necessarily going to give them up just because we're showing them the cost of it. But we don't need the majority. We just need a plurality. That's what we're going for. So we got to keep the base intact and activated. And we got to deliver those few voters. We don't need the majority, but we need enough of them to make a winning coalition. We can do it if we're not afraid of our own shadow. We cannot outrun who we are, and we cannot outrun the values of democracy that are predicated on a multiracial reality. That's the country and the society we live in, and we've got to grapple with that for a future that's livable.
And Daryl, I know that we're running out of time. Woo! There's so much. I just want people to know that, what I loved about the 75 million. Obviously, those aren't all Black folks, right? Those are, a lot of, whites, a lot of Latinos, a lot of Asians, a lot of Native Americans. There's a lot of people in that 75 million. But one thing, but people, are just like obsessed. We want to study Trump voters. Study the white men and women who broke the mold, who said, I'm going to be, I believe in a multiracial America. I know that's more than just numbers. It means your power sharing. That it means, I'm going to reject all those racist tropes that were being thrown at Harris. And there were some racist tropes. I mean, they called her every kind of word, every kind of image that's negative to Black women. They ran them over and over. But those folks said, I ain't gonna buy it. We need to study them. Mm-hmm. What made them so strong? How do we replicate their numbers? I just think the people are reaching the wrong conclusions. You don't try to be more Republican than Republicans, because you can't be. Nobody wants Republican light. You got to be who you are, and you got to stand in the breach and fight for it. But what I really hate, is that I see political pundits and I see party leaders and I see a lot of people drawing the wrong conclusions. And folks, we got to get our narrative out there, and we got to be strong. And before we end, Daryl, can we just talk just a little bit about what we hope people will do this year, in the coming months? And probably we can go through each speaker and talk about what we hope people will do, and then we could end.
And that's a good idea, Barbara. I do want to do that about
Yes.
what we would like to see done, what our challenges are, how we meet the
Yes.
challenge.
Yes.
And what I'd like each speaker to do, though, is also to lift up, if there is one, of the people that have been nominated for one of the positions
That's what I want.
that you're opposed to, or you have feelings about, like RFK, just by example, and to just sort of lift it up to discuss this, and how can we fight that position, fight that nominee. And so let's go in our reverse order from as we opened up, and we'll start with Dr. Wills. Dr. Wills.
So I'm gonna need a second to get a notebook with all the people that I currently have listed. But yeah, just starting at the top of it, without again listing a plethora of people who share the same mindsets. But the nominee for the Secretary of Health and Human Services, RFK Jr. I I genuinely can't really begin to fathom the potential impacts of what not only the rhetoric but potential policies that can come from such a mindset that really isn't based in fact, right? If I was to ask anyone in this group by show of hands, have you met someone or heard of anyone within your immediate lifetime or within the past 5 to 10 years that has contracted polio? Have you ever seen an iron lung? Anyone with smallpox? Right? And these things have been pretty much eradicated or dwindled down to very, very extreme cases, all due to the advancements of medicine, of vaccines more specifically. Yet you have pseudoscientists that kind of come into this framework and again spew absolute nonsense, right?
Yes.
That really isn't backed by anything of logic, anything of fact, and they're politicizing a very sacred field, right? That's largely the big reason why many people, including my peers, my mentors, and those coming behind me, why they shy away from politics, from policy, and the bureaucracy behind it, because you see people who have MD credentials or DO credentials behind their names, PhDs even, who are coming out and saying that things that have worked and have proven, not only statistically and through academic research, but we see it like literal evidence that vaccines specifically work, yet are going to be at the pinnacle of our health decision making within this country and have the potential to do some real damage. And as usual, right, the same people that we're forgetting within our political discourse and our policies are going to be harmed the most, right? When we look at the intersection between race when it comes to white women and black women, of course, the alignment may not be as much to fight for reproductive rights because black women in this country are exponentially more at risk when it comes to birth complications in maternal care, right? So it's kind of in a weird way of like, okay, let me worry about what's in my yard before I care about my neighbors, not understanding that if there is some weed that is growing in the front yard, it's going to eventually come over, and you're both going to need weed whackers now. So yeah, I'm actually very, very nervous. Med Twitter, which is our space on social media, has definitely been in a frenzy because we're all worried, right? And not only with vaccines, the Affordable Care Act for all of the negatives that have been thrown out within the political realm, millions of people have received healthcare from it. Just the simple being of being able to get access, like being able to go see a doctor, not receive medication, not have a surgery, just to be able to walk into a doctor's office and get your heart listened to get a prostate exam done, literally could save someone's life within that split second. And you have a lot of people that have voted against their interests due to specific rhetorics, due to a lot of lies, due to propaganda. And I pray that this doesn't ultimately come back to be, a strong case of buyer's remorse, because our American people don't deserve that. The people that helped build this country, with the sweat of their brow and in the blisters and calluses of their hands, don't deserve that. So that is why we have to keep fighting. I have to keep pushing people within my field to kind of get over that, that quote unquote annoyance of entering this realm, because our patients need it. We need it. So yeah, thoughts and prayers. Hopefully things work out in a positive way, because, everyone's kind of scared at what could potentially transpire, but use that fear as motivation.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much, Dr. Wells. Jonah Minkelsern.
Thank you, Daryl. And again, just such an amazing group of people here today, and just so honored to be part of it. So we've been organizing with a coalition, We Are Worth Fighting For. And we've had 650 community gatherings that we've supported around the country. And the premise of what we can do, or the idea, is that we can block what they're doing. We can stop as much harm as possible as it's happening. We can break MAGA, and by cheapening and degrading the idea and their political strength, we can build unity, and bridge to defectors from the MAGA movement, and we can build power. So we can block, break, bridge, and build, and that's how we're going to break their movement for authoritarianism. And right now, at Public Citizen, we're focused on Patel and the nomination of Patel. Well, we're focused on a lot of the nominees, including RFK, but our campaign is focused on Patel. As I mentioned before, Hash Patel has said that he wants to weaponize the FBI against our communities to stop us from organizing, to come into our spaces, and break us up. And we want to use messaging to talk about how this is doing the bidding of the billionaires, to act as a security measure to enable him to do the things he wants to do to protect their interests against ours. And so really encourage everyone to join us in organizing, and we're working with a group that's providing some grants, and there's a lot of Republicans who are potential allies here. So there's really a long list of Murkowski, Collins, Curtis, Young, McConnell, Cornyn, Ernst, Cassidy, Grassley, Langford, Tillis, Rounds, Graham, Moreno, Sheehy, Sullivan, Thune, and McCormick have all said things that indicate that they could be movable, and we want to support engagement of them, but just broad engagement on this, and we think we can win this, and some of the other nominees like RFK.
And if people want to get in contact with your organization, Jonah, how do people get in contact with Public Citizen?
Well, I'd love them to reach out to me. My email is jzern@citizen.org, JZERN@citizen.org. I'm happy to connect with anyone. Also really want to support getting grants out there to support people in doing the work, so can help provide those. But just want to work with you all, and really, again, so honored and grateful to be here. Really heroic group of people tonight.
And we appreciate your partnership. Professor Crenshaw.
Well, I was going to also say Cash Patel. I will combine that with Pam Bondi and will say this. People push back when we say that we are sliding into fascism. With the nomination of these two, there should no longer be any pushback. We shouldn't have to have that fight anymore. The question should only be, can we defeat it? When you take over law enforcement, and the Attorney General, you put them in the pocket of the supreme leader, and let's just call it what it is, the supreme leader. Then you have the most important forces of a police state ready to roll out. And in case anyone thinks it's an exaggeration, and this is one of the things that I consistently say when people say, "Can it happen here?" I say, does COINTELPRO mean anything to you? Right? Does the wholesale effort to wipe out the democracy movement in the 50s, which is basically what McCarthyism was, that was assisted and aided by the FBI, does that mean anything to you? And I think because in our history books, that period of time gets written as either that was about race or that was about communism. People don't understand. No, what that was about was the use of the government to basically undermine true democratic forces in American society. So don't think that because it only happened, to people that you don't value or you don't see having a connection with it, that wasn't a clear indicator of how vulnerable our society can be when these important offices are put in the wrong hands. When we think today about the limitations of racial equity, we can't tell that story without telling a story about how J. Edgar Hoover used his power to undermine the strength, the breadth, the depth, and ultimately the leadership of the civil rights movement. We still haven't gotten over that. And we're about to go back into another period of time when someone else with even more extreme views is taking over the FBI. And I don't mean this to celebrate the FBI that we've had since then, because let's be honest, the FBI still hasn't been great with respect to racial justice. They actually designated Black Lives Matter as a racial as extremist racial identity group on par with the Proud Boys. So we're talking about going from that outrage to something in which the Proud Boys may end up not being seen as an extremist group, but heck, TJC, right? Any of us who are talking the language of racial justice could easily find ourselves on the receiving end of FBI surveillance, disruption, and dismantlement. It's happened before. So we've got to tell the story to the youngins, to people who have faith in our democracy. Democracy is not a muscle that operates without exercising it. We've got to exercise it. We've got to force these issues, and we've got to fight like hell, because the future of our lives, our organizations, and our democracy really depend on it.
Thank you so much for that, Professor Crenshaw. And Barbara already knew as soon as you said the name Pam Bondi, that I was falling off my seat, because I've been trying to tell folks, know who she is, know her history, understand that Pam Bondi was the appointed Attorney General out of Florida under DeSantis, and that she was the architect of the policy that went after the two elected prosecutors in Florida to remove them from their seats, primarily because they would not enforce the abortion bans that they were trying to impose, and some other issues that were there. So we've got to be certain that we stand up for that fight, particularly with Pam Bondi and all the others I think that have been listed. Barbara, I know you wanted to bring us home. Barbara Arnwine, bring us on home, Barbara.
What a night, what a night, what a night. Thank you, everyone who has attended this program. We're not finished. We're not finished, folks. We're going to have more of these programs. We're going to be organizing, and we invite you to be part of our organizing. I want to thank every panelist, and I know Daryl will formally thank everybody, but just thank you. What energy, what a difference it made to have a doctor in the house. Woo! Thank you, Kyler. What a difference it made to have, Jonah in the house. Thank you, Jonah. What a difference it made to have one Kimberly Crenshaw in the house. Folks, join us as we move through this year, this coming year. First of all, by the way, there was one person who didn't get mentioned on that list of horrible folks. Of course, everybody's been talking about the defense secretary, Hesketh, and he's horrible, Hesketh. He should be defeated. But also, don't forget, there's an assistant attorney general for civil rights nomination. Her name is Harmeet K. Dillion, and she is horrible and has no business even looking at the Civil Rights Division. Nevertheless, directing it. It will be total destruction of that division. So we will fight her. We will also fight Linda McMahon, right? For the Secretary of Education. So I just want to mention that. Folks, join us in January 21st. We'll be in good old Brunswick. Folks, join us March 6th. We'll be in good old Selma for the 60th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act. Huge, huge, huge anniversary. Join us in April, being supportive of the work we do for our Gen Z training. June 10th, in June, we'll be celebrating the 10th anniversary of TJC, the 10th anniversary of the Transformative Justice Coalition. Join us. We're going to have a nice celebration to really take that into fruition. July, we're going to have our John Lewis Day of Action again, Jonah. We'll be doing that on July 17th. All of our groups will be coming together. Join us, folks, in August when we celebrate the 60th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act itself. In March, we're doing the 60th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, but in July, we will actually talk about the signing of the Voting Rights Act 60th anniversary. Then in November, we're going to be on the road, folks. We got to do New Jersey. We got to do Virginia. There are elections. There are actually elections in 20 states, for mayoral, for state offices, for all kinds of judges, for everything. Folks, we will have an active year. We're going to fight this mass deportation nonsense, all the hate. TJC has a program in mind. We've been working on it. We're going to help to unite communities, as Jonah has correctly, been speaking to. We're going to do everything we can to fight back. And as we keep saying, we're going to fight for it. Kim, how can people see your montage?
Let me see if I can paste it here.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. I just so they can click on that and see the montage.
You got to see it, folks.
Created this because people seem to have forgotten what preceded the election. So, and seeing it all together, the racism, the misogyny, and the misogynoir makes you even more exasperated about the failure of the Monday morning quarterbacking to call it out.
Yes. And everyone, Callie House, study Callie House. She was the first person that J. Edgar Hoover took down, who was a Black organizer. Callie Guy House, study her history, because you don't understand what happened to Black movements during that whole period of the J. Edgar Hoover without seeing how he went after House. And then Garvey, and then COINTELPRO and all the rest of it. Folks, you got to study her, because she also is inspiration, like Fannie Lou Hamer and so many others, just unknown. She's the mother of the reparations movement. You got to study her history. The other thing, please sign our voting rights pledge. It's going to be at tjcoalition.org. And the last thing, people, let me just end on this note, because my board reminded me to end on this note. In 1895, Frederick Douglass came home from a meeting with his new wife, of suffragists. And it was a cold evening, and he came home, and there was a young man who had been sitting on his porch all night long, waiting for him to come home. And when he got to the porch, the young man jumped up and he said, "Mr. Douglas, sir, Mr. Douglas, sir, I'm so glad to see you because I need your help. I need your help. I'm desperate. I need your help. I don't know. I don't know how to deal with the period that we're in. Every gain we ever made has been taken from us. Reconstruction is dead. All those 60 people we had in Congress are gone. Mr. Douglas, they took away the voting, they took away our Civil Rights Act. Mr. Douglas, they are killing our people when they try to vote in North Carolina and places. Mr. Douglas, what can we do, Mr. Douglas? This is horrible. It just seems like there's no hope left. Mr. Douglas, what do we do? And they said that the mighty Frederick Douglass, the last words we know he spoke publicly ever, his last words to that young man, anguished, demoralized, confused, worried about would a future ever be there again. He said 3 words: organize, organize, organize. Agitate, agitate, agitate. Those were his words. People, in this moment, we go to the well of knowledge. In this moment, we drink from that well. In this moment, we draw our substance and our sustenance and our power and our knowledge and our fuel from that moment. Let us never forget who we are. We are justice warriors fighting for a new order in this country, for a truly just, inclusive, robust, multiracial democracy. Thank you, Daryl. Thanks.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you so much. Thank you to Professor Kimberly Crenshaw for being with us today. You know, just really appreciate you every time you're with us. Always appreciate you. Jonah Minkoff-Zern, thank you so much for being here, for being a partner with us and all that we do. Dr. Kyla Wills, you know, you're part of the family. I don't even know if I need to say thank you. You're part of that TJC family. You're definitely in there. We appreciate you. Folks, we do invite you to join us every Tuesday at noon Eastern Standard Time for Igniting Change Radio. It can be found on barbaraonline.com or WOLDCnews.com. You can also follow the Transformative Justice Coalition on X at TJC_DC or at Barb73 or at Free D Vote Daryl. Free D Vote Daryl. We're all there on X, folks. You know, I end my tagline this way, and I encourage you, and I encourage you, and I'll encourage you again. It's time to get off the sidewalk, get into the streets, cause some good trouble, and let's get this democracy rolling, and so that it presents as it should present, as a true multiracial democracy representing the United States of America. Until next time, peace, everyone.
Peace.